law firms are small businesses the way the HVAC firm that was the source of the Target breach was a vendor and a small business. So we need to think of law firms in the same light. And companies that work with law firms need to understand that their environments could be fortress-like, but if their bridge is down to vendors that have authorized access to their systems or who hold their data, those law firms, like all vendors, are potentially vulnerable. And so the companies that work with law firms need to impose restrictions and required safeguards on law firms to ensure that their data is maintained in a secure fashion, maybe not the most secure fashion possible because that's reasonably impossible these days, but in a at least a reasonably secure fashion. So we're seeing financial institutions, for example, impose significant contractual restrictions on law firms, ensuring that there are contractual safeguards. They're also doing on-site audits to ensure that the systems are reasonably capable of protecting the data. They're requiring law firms to segment their data, for example. So we are seeing multiple restrictions from our clients imposing safeguards on us with respect to their data.
Yeah, I think of it as what do you have that's interesting or valuable? And I think if you talk to a couple law firms down in Panama, they have a whole new view of this after the last month. Do you have a list of people, names, emails? Say if you're a plaintiff side, I think for a class action, you probably have a lot of information there. I can use those to create new accounts. Do you have information about a new deal? Are you a deal lawyer? Do you have information that I could trade on? We saw, people break into PR Newswire just so they could, fast trade on that information. I think law firms, and the other part about this is it's easy to do now. You don't need an army of people to break into law firms. You write an algorithm, just let it go look for the vulnerability.
They tend not to be the most technologically savvy.
Yeah, they're definitely perceived as a soft target.
Yeah, they're a little bit crusty, right?
Is that true, or is that just
small business?
Yeah, it's a small business. I agree with you, and it's. For me, the interesting part about it too is that not only is it small business, it's almost a confederation. So you think partners with their clients. Most businesses now, big business, global businesses, are pretty much like a pyramid. You have top-down, management that tells people what to do. You ever breach a law firm, and Lisa's clients are affected, my clients are affected, your clients are affected. We all have a personal interest in that. It's my reputation that I have to go call my clients and say, we lost all your stuff. And so for me, the real challenge is not only should you be ready, but how are you going to respond?
One change that we're seeing, Mark, and it's a good point that you make, is that it's not just about personal information anymore. So it's about financial data, it's about M&A information, it's about R&D, and law firms are a very heavy repository, really a treasure trove of that information.
I think to answer that question about whether this is a real thing or not, I think today the Edelson law firm is. Did you see that today? They're motioning the court to try to unseal their complaint, their class action complaint against an as yet unnamed Chicago law firm. I think as Edelson gets ramped up and we see more of those, it's going to be very much a real thing. Not just a media, firestorm. It's going to be something that firms reputationally are going to have to deal with, whether there's anything there or not, whether they ultimately are vindicated as having reasonable data security.
And I think that's a great point in that it's not about pecuniary damage in many cases, it's about reputational risk.
Kevin, how do you see things?
No, I agree with all the points that are made, and to your point on being a repository, I mean, what greater repository of information is there than a law firm, and typically on both sides of the transaction as well, especially if you look at a large international M&A transaction, the value of that unknown information can be traded on, right? So maybe a law firm is taking a lot of steps, maybe they're really progressive in building out a robust kind of network security, information security platform. They're probably not still as robust or have not dedicated as much revenue to building that out, maybe as a large pharmaceutical company that really believes deeply in protecting its trade secrets. They kind of think, well, this is some transactional information. We're going to review this. You have a senior partner, and within that kind of grouping of people, you also have junior lawyers, associates, who are all accessing this information from their endpoint devices at 1 o'clock in the morning as they're traveling. So even if you talk about the security of the network, that network is kind of only secure as your last access point to reach that data. Were you roaming on a Starbucks Wi-Fi network because you were going to get an extra shot of espresso so you could stay awake and finish,
And
research
built
on
into
this?
that is a much more mobile workforce too. Just in general, you're not going to keep, employees for as long. You're going to be constantly having to train them and change things and keep up with the technology that is changing as we're sitting here.
Yeah.
When you get back to your office, we're not using that anymore. So there's a lot of challenge there.
Are law firms soft targets?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're very soft targets. And if you think about it the way that I think about it from my previous life working for the government, as an intelligence officer, you're trained to recruit spies and steal secrets, right? I mean, literally the government trains intel officers how to go steal stuff, right? And do it surreptitiously where no one knows. I heard the CISO of Yahoo use this example of if you were out at work for the day and came home, as you're approaching your front door, you realize that someone has kicked in the door, has knocked over things in your foyer, and is sitting on your sofa, watching your TV, drinking your beer out of your fridge. You would realize that immediately and feel like this very, visceral kind of reaction to that. Really successful hack attacks continue for hundreds of days. The latest numbers are anywhere from 221 to 229 days on a network before they're even perceived to be there, right? That's a critical time where they can access your network, find out who is the partner that I'm most interested in, how can I work through this whole network architecture, how can I track and monitor the actionable information that I can take and monetize or trade on or use to my advantage in negotiating against.
Or set up a really nice spearfishing expedition on the basis of what you found out just on your initial grab of information.
On top of all of this, law firms are inherently an open environment because we are about sharing information, and we can't be as effective or as efficient if we don't share information with each other. So the systems are inherently open.
There are two types of major corporations in the United States: those that have been hacked by the Chinese and those that do not know they've been hacked by the Chinese. And if that statement is correct, then there's a lot going on out there that folks hadn't figured out yet. The Mandiant company